Thank you for joining us, Peter. We've got you for 5 minutes this afternoon, so if you want to start your presentation, we'll take it away from there. Peter, you're on mute.
I'm presenting as a private individual. My main thrust of the submission is the importance of New Zealand government taking account of the effect its actions has on international relations, particularly in a highly volatile Asia-Pacific region. The bill itself could be seen as detracting from our reputation for respecting Indigenous rights. It's in an environment in which, in recent weeks, major changes have been taking place. They highlight the fact that Pacific nations in particular are becoming much more assertive of their identity as a collective and their rights as sovereign states. They are also, and this is clear if you look at some of the recent materials such as the Pacific Islands Political Studies Association conference, there's a strong assertion of the right of Pacific states to determine with whom they work and not to have their agendas set by outside parties. It's also clear that at the moment, New Zealand still enjoys a preferred status. We're not seen as a neo-colonial power seeking to impose our views. Interestingly, it seems that Australia is regarded as being in that category. So it's particularly important that we preserve our reputation internationally as having a strong regard for the rights of Indigenous peoples, and the Treaty Principles Bill goes directly against that. We're also in a situation in which, because of our strong Pacifica population, there are enormous channels of communication between New Zealand and Pacific countries in particular about what we're doing and how we do it. So I urge the committee to make very clear that this bill needs to be seen in the context of the damage it potentially will do, especially in a volatile and rapidly changing environment. I'll stop there and allow time for questions.
Thank you, Peter. That's very concise. I'll open it up for questions from members if there are any. There appear to be none immediately, so there is a bit of time remaining, Peter, if you want to elaborate on your submission.
I think what I'll do then is to say that we need to look particularly closely at the historic relationship between China and Pacific countries, the regard in which Pacific countries hold China, which is quite different from the way that New Zealand, Australia, and our Five Eyes partners perceive China, that it's going to be very important that we balance carefully the reality that many of our Pacific neighbours see China as a potentially supportive partner, which is not out to take short-term advantage. That's the perception. It may not be the reality, but it is something that needs to be factored into the way we manage our relationships. We need also, I think, to be possibly a little less precious than we have been in terms of reaction to what China has been doing in the Tasman, and it was certainly will be seen as provocative. I suspect from the perspective of Pacific countries that we wish to influence, it will be seen much more as China simply saying, we have as much right to be here as the US does, and we're simply demonstrating that right. So we are in a very difficult situation in which historic understandings are no longer as useful for us as they once were, and that we're going to be confronted with a new reality. We have a very real advantage. As I said earlier, we're not perceived in the same way that Australia is. We are still seen, I think, as a potentially friendly and empathetic country, possibly because we're not big enough and powerful enough to impose our will on anybody. But that should be seen almost as an advantage now, and we need to take it, really recognise the importance that we have, among other things, as a potential interlocutor between the developed world, which we believe we belong to, and the developing world in the Pacific. So there are some very important issues at stake, and this bill is demonstrating an attitude towards Indigenous peoples and their rights, which is quite inconsistent with the way we need to shape our future. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for that. It's a new perspective, a new unique perspective I hadn't heard from before. So I just want to acknowledge your submission on behalf of the committee. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now going to move to submission from Tanya W, who's with us in person. Kia ora, Tanya. Thank you for being with us.
E kore rātou, e koro hikitia, pēnei a tātou, kua mahu e nei. E kore hoki rātou, e ngoikore, aha kua pēhia i ngā āhuatanga o te wā. I te hekenga atu o te rā, tai noa ki te aranga mai i te ata. Ka maumahara tonu tātou, kia rātou. Ka maumahara tonu tātou, kia rātou. They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them. Ko Tanya W koto tōku ingoa, he maramara kōhatua hau no putoa ki maunga, he ngararatana kai. Ka rere iho i ngā ia o te rangitāe ki tai atu ki te moana nui a toi. Tau i hoa i te maru o mauau, pāwharautia mā tātua. I have chosen to commence my oral submission to this committee with the Ode of Remembrance for a very simple and yet significant reason. Every Anzac Day, millions of us stand at dawn and make this promise to our fallen soldiers. We will remember them. Ka maumahara tonu tātou, kia rātou. And yet, I sit here before you today in this house that only exists because of the sacrifices made by our tupuna and great-grandfathers to condemn a bill that is based on the very same racist, divisive, political ideology that plunged the globe into 2 world wars previously. And in case you have not been paying attention, that same political ideology is being mimicked by a local used car salesman, as former Prime Minister Jenny Shipley so aptly put it. If only the National Party still had leadership of that calibre at the helm. This bill, and its just as dangerous twin sister, the Regulatory Standards Bill, are part of a global agenda to silence Indigenous voices so that the steamroller of corporate greed that is responsible for the climate change crisis in which we find ourselves can just keep on rolling. Let me be clear, the only thing preventing the very rich and very powerful foreign interests that the used car salesman actually works for from undertaking a second wave of economic colonisation is te tiriti. It is no coincidence that the Treaty Principles Bill and the Regulatory Standards Bill were released for consultation at the same time over the summer holiday period. Just like it is no coincidence that the Treaty Impact Analysis for the Regulatory Standards Bill contains 22 redactions in a 12-page document. The Ministry for Regulation is refusing to release the full document despite thousands of Official Information Act requests seeking to understand how the Regulatory Standards Bill breaches Te Tiriti. The Treaty Principles Bill is blatant. It is a slap in the face, an affront to every Māori soldier who fought and died for this country. The Regulatory Standards Bill is its nefarious, deceptive counterpart and seeks to achieve the same goals of sidelining Te Tiriti, weakening the power of the people to hold their political leaders accountable, and of course, opening New Zealand up to privatisation. What else would a used car salesman be good for? But the main difference between the Treaty Principles Bill and the Regulatory Standards Bill is this. National did not agree to pass the Treaty Principles Bill. It only agreed to waste a monumental amount of taxpayers' dollars to allow this racist circus of a bill to go through this process. But National has agreed to pass the Regulatory Standards Bill as soon as practicable. Why? When this bill has been blocked 3 times previously, most recently in 2021 by the Treasury, because they know it will very likely bankrupt the country. You will have to ask Christopher Luxon that question. However, while these seeds of racist, foreign political ideology seek to find a way to plant themselves in our whenua, we are not without hope. And the main source of that hope is Te Tiriti itself. Te Tiriti is the founding constitutional document of this country. It is because of Te Tiriti that I am sitting here with my Ngāti Awa, Tūhoi, Tūwharetoa, Ngāti Hine, and Whakatohia Whakapapa on one side, and my Irish, Scottish, English, and Scandinavian whakapapa on the other. I am a walking, talking, breathing expression of Te Tiriti. Ko au Te Tiriti, ko Te Tiriti ko au. I am the treaty, and the treaty is me. I support wholeheartedly the beautiful submission made by Dr. Ganesh Nana that Te Tiriti is the basis upon which every person who now calls Aotearoa their home can be welcomed as tangata tiriti and stand alongside us as tangata whenua. Not above, not below, but beside. The ACT Party would have you believe that equality before the law requires us to throw Te Tiriti in the rubbish bin of history and become a single, homogenised monoculture. But what I say to you is this. Kia maumahara tonu tātou, kia rātou. We will remember them. We cannot allow these racist seeds of division to take root in our whenua. I sit here proudly with a photo of my Pākehā great-grandfather, George Piercy, wounded 3 times in World War I, and wearing the service medals of my korauā Tami Waikato from World War II. We cannot, we must not repeat the mistakes of history. Racism, division, and hatred will only put us on a path to despair. Walking beside one another, accepting and celebrating our differences is the only path forward. I ask every single member of Parliament to think about those who fought alongside one another for this country when you vote on this bill and on the Regulatory Standards Bill. I ask you to remember the promise that we make to our soldiers every Anzac Day. Kei ware ware tātou, lest we forget. Āpiti hono tātai hono, rātou te hunga mate kia rātou. Āpiti hono tātai hono, tātou te hunga ora kia tātou. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kare au haramai ki konei ki te whakautu ngā pātai, ka haramai au ki te ui pātai kē. Engari, anei he paku waiata, hei ki naki i taku kōrero. Hoki mai e ta mama, ki roto, Ringa ringa e tu whera tu nei. Kei te kapa kapa mai te haki. I ngā rangi runga o tia mana e. Hoki mai. Hoki mai, ki te wakainga. E tutu ki te tumanako. Kei te kapa mai, te haki. I ngā rangi runga o tia mana, tahiru a toru whaksi auehi. Ngā mihiru.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you for your submission this afternoon. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Thank you, Chair.
We'll now move to submission from Rie Casan. Rie, thank you for joining us today. We have you for 5 minutes this afternoon, so I'll invite you to take a seat at the front desk there. I'll hand over to you to begin your presentation.
I ngā rangatira o te komiti whiriwhiri take ture. Tēnā koutou. Ka nui te mihi ki a koutou katoa. Tēnei te mihi atu ki te aukainga ki te atiawa me ngā Māori I tēnei rohe. Kei te mihi, kei te mihi. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to my submission on the Treaty Principles Bill, which I strongly oppose. Almost 4 decades ago, my wife and I migrated to this country from Sri Lanka, a country that, like Aotearoa, New Zealand, had experienced colonization by the British, but regained independence in 1948. When we arrived here, we were interested to learn that this country was founded on a covenant between the Crown and Maori as tangata whenua. We decided to honor both founding cultures of this nation. As migrants, we are grateful to live in an increasingly multicultural Aotearoa. And since the 1980s, we have had the privilege of helping refugees and new migrants to integrate into New Zealand society. But I strongly believe that biculturalism, as envisaged in Te Tiriti o Waitangi, ought to be the bedrock on which multiculturalism is built. Because when the relationship between the Crown and Maori is healthy and constructive, then all communities and all cultures can thrive. I practiced as a solicitor for 24 years. So this bill concerns me greatly. The proponents of the bill argue that Te Tiriti conflicts with the notion that all citizens are equal before the law, and they disregard the unique status that Maori have as tangata whenua. The bill attempts to give the Crown a dominant hand by misrepresenting the articles of the treaty and by skewing the balance envisaged by those who signed it. It ignores Maori people's right to tino rangatiratanga or self-determination, guaranteed under Article 2, and attempts to assimilate them into the general population. For decades, the Crown ignored its treaty obligations and used various legislative mechanisms to deny Maori the rights guaranteed to them. Thankfully, the 1980s and 1990s saw a reawakening of the Crown's conscience, with the Crown passing new laws to put things right for Maori. Sadly, though, this bill has reopened old wounds and risks nullifying the progress made in Maori-Crown relations. It is important to recognize that this bill is not a member's bill, but a government bill sponsored by a minister of the Crown. And it is astonishing that the government has introduced this bill without consulting iwi Māori as its treaty partner, and despite their strong and justifiable objections. As we all know, the early English missionaries contributed to the drafting of the treaty. I have been reflecting on what they might say if they were here today watching this process unfold. There's a story in the Bible of Jesus's adversaries trying to trap him with the question whether it was right to pay taxes to Caesar, with Jesus responding, "Give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's." The treaty being a covenant between Maori and the Crown, I would think that if those same English missionaries were here today, they would say, "Give to the Crown what is owed to the Crown under Article 1 of Te Tiriti, and give to Maori what is owed to Maori under Article 2. I urge you to reject this bill entirely. Kua mutu taku kōrero, no reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you for your submission. That's all the time we have today. So I just want to acknowledge your submission on behalf of the committee. Thank you for being here.
Kia ora.
We'll now move to submission from, apologies for the pronunciation, but is it Marijke Warmenhoven? Cool.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, Marijke. Apologies if I haven't pronounced your name correctly there, but thank you for joining the committee. We have you for a 10-minute submission this afternoon, so I will invite you to begin your presentation now.
Yes, kia ora. Sorry, having a bit of difficulty here.
No, you're okay. We're slightly early, so I'll give you a chance to settle in.
So kia ora, my name is Marijke Warmenhoven, and today I'm submitting on behalf of my family and all of us descendants. So my whakapapa is to the tribes of Ngāti Porou, Te Whānau Apanui, Rongo Whakaata and Ngāti Awa. In this instance, I want to talk about our tūpuna. So my name is Marijke Warmenhoven. My mother is Rangimai Te Hei. My father is Johannes Cornelius Warmenhoven of the Netherlands. Through my maternal whakapapa, my mother Rangimai, she is the daughter of Rongo Kino Aupori Te Hei. Rongo Kino Aupori Te Hei is the daughter of Rere Moana Rangiwaha Wikitapu. Rere Moana Rangiwaha Wikitapu was the daughter of Erina Puti Puti Heihi. Erina Puti Puti Heihi was the daughter of Hariata Pōiwa of Te Whānau Arua Taupare ki Tokomaru Bay. Hariata Pōiwa was the sole daughter of a descendant of Chief Te Paratene Te Moko Puarongo, who was one of the chiefs who signed the Treaty of Waitangi in Tokomaru Bay in June 1840. What I will say is we are the survivors. We talk about our whakapapa and our connection to Chief Paratene Te Moko Puarongo, as does the Crown acknowledge their whakapapa in regards to the British monarchy and the descendants of the Crown today, as we are the descendants of that chief who signed. Our first submission is we oppose this bill in its entirety. We oppose the right of someone such as Mr. Seymour having the ability to even amend, review, or tamper with a document, a contract that he was not party to sign. Our submission is those of us who are uri of the chiefs and the crown were the parties of that contract. And those are the only people that can amend, review, or otherwise those terms of that contract. What I want to say was, our tūpuna Chief Paratene Te Mokopua Rongo, he led the Kingites through the East Coast land wars. So the ho-ho. It's no secret that there were those of our tribe within the Ngāti Porou area that allied with the Crown. And at the time, our tūpuna led the resistance. We lost the war. And with that, we lost a lot of our mana and our land interests, i.e. today, only 5% of New Zealand's total land area is in Māori land title, 5%. So after signing that treaty in 1840, he was guaranteed protection of his lands, his rivers, his nature, his protection of his family and everything else. By 1853, Bishop William Williams arrived to the East Coast with the Bible in one hand and guns looming in the background. As per the account of his historical handwritten notes, Bishop William Williams was also a spy for the Crown. So as he purported to bring in the gospel with the Bible in one hand, as he visited each place, Whakawhitira being one of those places on the outskirts of Rutoria, there were approximately 4,000 people in that pa site at that time. Today, you'll be lucky to get 50 people in that area. So what he was accounting for, he was counting the number of people that were in each pa site, but at the same time, he was taking note of how many fighting men were present at each pa site that he visited. So although the treaty was signed supposedly in good faith, there was war, guns, and genocide to follow. Also, what I wanted to mention that the concept of runanga thereafter was a concept of Governor George Grey. So as each chief system and each hapu were annihilated or the chiefs were killed or removed, the concept of runanga was mooted. So that was the idea. Instead of dealing with chiefs and their individual hapu, it was then decided to look at the concept of runanga and a natural larger classification of our people. And thus today, after the land wars, the tribe Ngāti Porou evolved. Prior to that, our tūpuna signed as Tokomaru, where he was living and where he resided as a chief. What I want to say is, in regards to the Crown and the British colony and British colonisation, is that the British monarchy has committed crimes against humanity, genocide against the entire Commonwealth over hundreds of years, and still has not been brought to justice within their own judiciary for those many genocides and ill effects on our people. What I want to say also is what we had as a people, what we should have had as a people, and what we have today is nothing that our ancestors anticipated when they signed that treaty on behalf of all of us, their uri tuku iho. I will say we are the survivors because through much has been lost. The fact I can sit here today and know about that tūpuna of mine who signed the treaty after the many wars and misfortunes that come upon us, the loss of our mana and the loss of our whenua. What I want to say is Mr. Seymour has no right, has no whakapapa right to change, amend or temper with this contract, with this treaty between the Crown and the chiefs who signed at the time. That mana should be left with the uri of those chiefs, no one else, and the Crown. Whakapapa to whakapapa. That's my submission. Thank you.
Thank you, Marijke. Thank you for providing that submission. We do have time for some questions, and first one's from Todd Stevenson.
Thank you for your submission and making the time. It seems you have some concerns about the role the church played, particularly in relation to your own iwi. Do you think that, do you think it's right that we've heard actually quite a few submissions today from religious organisations. Do you think it's right that they're engaging in this conversation?
Well, natural justice allows them to engage in this conversation, but it was trickery, really. It was trickery. They came with the Bible. I mean, what's happening in Gaza today is a modern day example of what happened to our people and the entire Commonwealth. So in regards to the Anglican Church especially, I just did some research, and it was essentially a colonial tool, one of many tools that we use to assimilate, brainwash our people. Today, it's only probably 250,000 Anglicans members. I just Googled that earlier, and the majority of them are Māori people, ironically, that were assimilated into that system. I know for our older generation, like my grandparents' generation, you know, for us to talk like this would have been swearing in their time. However, as we become educated and learn more, and when you look at the Anglican Church and the reason it was formed, it was something to do with one of the kings wanted to marry another wife. So he made his own church, essentially. So the whole foundation of it is not even right.
Thanks. Look, thanks, Marijke. We've now just gone a bit over time. We're probably a little bit far away from the content of the bill, but I'll just, on behalf of the committee, thank you for providing your submission this afternoon and for being here before the committee. We do appreciate your time.
Thank you. I hope I've brought a different view and perspective to the panel today. So,
no, you have. Thank you very much. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Our next submission is from Kitty Rikihana, and Kitty is with us in person. So good afternoon, Kitty. Thank you for being with us. I'll just put, you've only got 5 minutes this afternoon, unfortunately, but we'll put the 5 minutes on the clock and hand over to you.
Tēnei te mihi ki te kōmiti. Ngō Ngāti Raukawa ki te tonga, tia te awa ki whakarongotai, Ngāti Toa Rangatira ahau, ko Kitty Rikihana tōku ingoa. Ki taku taha, ko tōku hoa rangatira, ko Rito, ko Tui e tukau hoki, ko maua mātāmua ngō Ngāti Mutinga taranaki anō hoki. To the committee, I'd like to acknowledge this House, this committee, and to the leaders and academics and extraordinary folk like Ms. Waikato and my learned friend, Mr. Casanada, who spoke against the bill before me. King Tawhiao said, "I have taken my faith from the base of the mountain, and I have laid it back there. In time of difficulty, you will find it there." That mountain is Maunga, Taranaki Maunga, and that faith is Pai Mariri. So in this time of difficulty, I would like to acknowledge our Taranaki Maunga. And at its base, Te Matatini has begun. And there are thousands of kaihaka, and our youngest daughter included, as volunteers and spectators who will take part in one of the largest and most affirming events in our Māori calendar. So whatever their religion, background or circumstance, I am pleased that our people will draw strength from the base of the Maunga this week. Engari, kāti, ko te kaupapa o te rā. I take our submission as read. We would like the committee to reject this bill in its entirety. We assert its purpose and effect is misguided and at best and detrimental to the future of Aotearoa at worst. The result of this bill will be to place a version of Te Tiriti principles into legislation that will consign iwi and our tangatiriti counterparts into litigation with the Crown for years to come, because this bill, we assert, is a breach of Te Tiriti of Waitangi. I ask this committee, why knowingly head down the path of greater injustice when the alternative is to continue to work together to support prosperity for all? Today, I ask you to take a moment to envision an Aotearoa where Te Tiriti o Waitangi was upheld since 1840. And I'm going to take a few precious seconds of our submission time for you to consider what that vision may look like for you. So imagine if our te ao Māori role models, like Wi Parata, Te Puia, Whinakupa, were lauded for their achievements with the wins of a thriving Te Tiriti partnership behind them. Instead, we have to recognise them for succeeding despite the trials of colonisation and breaches of Te Tiriti. So I worry that this bill will return us to a pre-1970s state, a state that is helped along by the views of the supporters of this bill, that native title is irrelevant and our people primitive and unable to enter into a contract such as Te Tiriti. And I just want to bring up a case dated 1877 where those views were affirmed, and that was when the Te Tiriti o Waitangi was called a simple nullity by Chief Judge Prendergast in a case known as Wi Parata and the Bishop of Wellington, meaningful to us because we are descendants of Wi Parata te Kākākura. In short, the effect of that judgment was to set a precedent that muted Te Tiriti for near on a century, and I fear this bill will nullify Te Tiriti again by freezing Indigenous rights to those of the 19th century and only preserve those that are in treaty settlements, to reject mātou ranga Māori and a Māori worldview for any so-called national consensus building, and ask us to view the iwi-Crown relationship through individualistic and one-sided principles. I argue that instead, efforts towards upholding Te Tiriti o Waitangi since 1975 have begun to lay a platform for our mokopuna to thrive. In education through kohanga reo and kura kaupapa Māori and whare wānanga, where my daughters have been fortunate to attend, and in normalising te reo Māori in our homes, workplaces and communities. We thrive in business through Māori business innovations and in horticulture and agribusiness and commerce, and in health where I spend my professional days, where the effects of treaty breaches continue to create inequity, yet we as iwi Māori persist as allied health workers, traditional healers, nurses, doctors, all delivering culturally safe care to everyone in our communities. So I fear that this bill and its fundamentalist libertarian roots will roll back efforts to rectify breaches of Te Tiriti and apply a universalism approach that further entrenches injustice. So under the sheer weight of the information that you hear on this bill over these weeks, I ask you to reflect on your vision of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, one with the wind of Te Tino Rangatira behind it, and an iwi-Crown relationship at full sail. I believe that this vision can be realised, but it won't be with this bill. Tēnei te mihi, nui kia koutou katoa.
Sure.
Thank you, Kitty. Thank you for your submission this afternoon and perfectly timed the session. So thank you for being with us and for bringing your whānau and your colleagues with you too. So members will now go to our submission from Jayson Herewini, and Jayson's with us online. Jayson, good afternoon. Thank you for being with the committee. We've got you for 5 minutes this afternoon, so I'll hand over to you to begin your presentation.
Kia ora koutou. Tēnei te mihi kia koutou e kiri, nā mihi nui kia koutou e awhi mai e te wakapapa e tēnei ata nei. Kei te mōhio au e te maunga taranaki e ngā whānau katoa a te matatini e tēnei ata nei. Kia ora koutou e tēnei wā, kaore au e tautoko e tēnei piri, the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi Bill. Ka kōrero a hau, mō ona ngā koretanga me ngā panga kino ka puta mai i tēnei piri. I oppose this bill and demand its immediate withdrawal because it's racist, vague, and fails to clearly define what the principles of the treaty actually are. This lack of clarity leads to inconsistent interpretations, legal disputes, and unintended consequences. Courts in the Waitangi Tribunal have spent decades interpreting these principles in a way that reflects the treaty's evolving nature. This bill risks undermining that work and by imposing a rigid framework that fails to account for nuance or context. There has also been no meaningful consultation with Māori or the public. The treaty is about partnership, yet this bill does not reflect that. It feels rushed and disconnected from the people it claims to serve. I believe this bill is a disguise for limiting Māori rights and autonomy. By codifying treaty principles in such a way, it freezes their interpretation, preventing them from adapting to modern realities. This undermines decades of progress and creates division rather than unity. Speaking of division, let's examine a broader pattern. Successive governments, including this one, have welcomed immigrants and refugees into Aotearoa, providing them with housing, employment, and relocation funding. Meanwhile, Māori continue to be overrepresented in homelessness, unemployment, and poverty. This is not about immigration. It's about how the government is systematically prioritising newcomers over tangata whenua. The more we are outnumbered, the easier it becomes for the government to weaponise policies against us, weaken our presence, and push us towards extinction. This bill is part of that strategy, limiting our rights now so that they can strip them away entirely in the future. New Zealand First, the key player in the current government, has pushed to remove Māori names from government agencies, undermining the recognition of te reo Māori and Māori culture. This isn't just about names, it's about erasing the visibility and legitimacy of Māori in Aotearoa. The government has also applied pressure on local councils to remove Māori wards, one of the few mechanisms that guarantee Māori representation in local decision-making. This is yet another example of how this government is failing to honour its treaty obligations, and let's not forget the past actions of governments that have harmed Māori. The Foreshore Seabed Act 2004, under Helen Clark's Labour government, stripped Māori of their right to seek customary title over the foreshore seabed through the courts. This sparked nationwide protests, including the historic Hikoi to Parliament. More recently, Labour's COVID-19 mandates under the leadership of Jacinda Ardern and Chris Hipkins created deep divisions in our communities. While public health measures were necessary, the implementation ignored Māori perspectives and disproportionately impacted Māori communities. This bill has already cost taxpayers money that could have been spent on real issues: the high cost of living, healthcare, education, employment, and housing. Instead, we see successive governments weaponising policies against Māori and other low-income groups, including our tangata moana whānau. This government, like those before it, continues to make poor decisions that do nothing to uplift Māori or honour te tiriti. Instead, they waste taxpayers' money on policies that divide rather than unite, weaken Māori rights, and prioritise others over tangata whenua. This pattern of decision-making is not just flawed, it is deliberate, and it is a waste of money, time, energy, research, and resources. It must stop. So in conclusion, it is time for this government to end its pattern of wasting taxpayer money on divisive, racist legislation and instead focus on the real issues that matter to the people of Aotearoa. Therefore, Justice Committee, I urge you to stop this bill in its tracks. Kill the bill, do what is right, apau te tiriti. Nō reira, kei te ki atu au, kia kaua tēnei piri e wakamana ia, kia kaha ki te tiaki e ngā kaupapa o te tiriti. Kia mau ki ngā tikanga o te pono, te tika, me te aroha, tēnā koutou, huri noa, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora.
Oh, kia ora, Jayson. Thank you for your submission this afternoon. That's bang on the time allotted. So we'll just, on behalf of the committee, thank you again for being with us and for speaking to your written submission. We do appreciate your presence today.
Kia ora mo tēnā, ka kite.
We'll go to our next submission from Morehu McDonald. Morehu with us? Yeah. Good. Kia ora, Morehu. Thank you for being with the committee. We've got you for 5 minutes. No, we've got you for 10 minutes this afternoon. So I'll hand over to you to begin your presentation. You're on mute at the moment, sir.
Tēnā tātou katoa, tautoko atu au nā whakaaro whakatakotohia a Herewini e mui ahau. Taino ki e rā atu katoa, huri noa. Tai mai a Māori ai, ki te whakawero atu ki tēnei pire tūkino nei, kia nai tātou o te iwi Māori. Koe anō, ka huri au ki te whakaaro o rātou rā, e noho ana I raro te maru o te maunga tapu o Taranaki, o te kaupapa nunu ma te patatini, engari huri no ngā mihi koe mihi tia ki ngā maunga whakahi puta no te mutu. Koe anō ki ngā mihi hoki ki ngā huhua mate o tēnei a tātanei mātua tūpuna. Ko narawa te ki te pō, kei te pukana atu rātou ki tēnā kaupapa puta mai a waha, ringa a te matatini ki ngā kaupapa o te tiriti. Are te tū atu tēnā kaupapa kei mui a tātou pēnei ai tēnei huihuinga ki te whakatakoto kaupapa mua tēnei kaupapa mo te piri mo te Treaty Principles Bill. Koe anō. Ko au ko Morehu McDonald. I'm here on behalf of the Rawiri and Rāpata whānau and Ngā Hapu o Ngāti Hinarangi, as well as my iwi of Waikato Tainui and Maniapoto, and here to state that the Treaty Principles Bill is a betrayal of the Māori people by the Crown and the government. It is a deliberate political agenda by the ACT, National and New Zealand First parties to create a discord and division and to demonise and victimise Māori people for the sake of obtaining more political control and power for themselves. In terms of the Crown betrayal of Māori, I join with thousands of other Māori and tangata tiriti to unequivocally declare my opposition to the Treaty Principles Bill. Seymour's bill is an illegal, unjust and immoral violation of te tiriti o Waitangi. That is the Māori version of the treaty. And he whakaputunga, as I pointed out in my written submissions, which I take as being read. The bill is a continuation of the litany of betrayals of Māori people by the Crown. Within a few years after the signing of the Tiriti o Waitangi in 1840, the Crown deliberately breached and effectively ignored the terms of the Māori version of Te Tiriti, which had been signed in good faith by ariki and rangatira from the tribes throughout the motu. Instead of protecting Māori and our inalienable rights guaranteed under Te Tiriti, the Crown launched into a premeditated and systematic campaign of stealing and cheating Māori out of our lands. When Māori refused to sell their land, the Crown and colonial government employed genocidal actions, practices and policies, and racist legislation. They labelled Māori as rebels and sent British and colonial troops to invade Māori lands, forcing iwi and hapu into defensive wars in order to protect their lands, their people, their culture, their beliefs, their language, and their way of life from being utterly wiped off the face of the earth. The outcome of the Pākehā land wars, which raged around the country for about 40 years from 1843 to about 1881, was land confiscations and more Crown racist land legislation and genocidal policies to steal Māori land and to destroy Māori, our way of life, language, and culture. This rendered hapu and iwi landless and drove our people into abject poverty and despair. By the mid-1890s, the Māori population had dramatically declined from about 200,000 in 1840 to about 42,000. At the same time, the vast majority of all Māori land had been confiscated or illegally legislated and stolen from Māori by the Crown. Māori were on the brink of extinction as a direct result of the genocidal actions, policies, legislation, and processes put in place by the Crown to destroy the Māori people. The Treaty Principles Bill is illegal. Seymour's bill is illegal on the grounds that it attempts to renege and deny the original foundational terms of the Tiriti that was mutually agreed and accepted by Māori and the Crown 185 years ago. Māori treaty rights acknowledge the inalienable rights of Māori as being that of our tino rangatiratanga, the right to uphold and maintain our sovereignty, our mana motahake, the right of our self-government over our own people, lands and resources, our kawanatanga, or the right of joint governorship and partnership with the Crown, and oritinga, or the rights of freedom and equality as British citizens while retaining and upholding our treaty rights as guaranteed by Te Tiriti o Waitangi. Seymour's bill seeks to renege, revoke, and undo the promises and guarantees of protection of our inalienable treaty rights as given by the Crown to Māori in the signing of Te Tiriti. Treaty Principles Bill is unjust. The bill is unjust on the ground that it seeks to retrospectively undo the 50 years of treaty settlements that have been signed as a full and final agreement between the Crown and the many iwi and hapu from around the country. This makes the Crown's definition of a full and final settlement a joke, as it appears the Crown can renege on its past agreements and change and even revoke legislation at will to minimise its accountability and responsibility and obligations to Māori as a co-signatory partner of Te Tiriti. This bill will negatively impact the full and final agreements of past treaty settlements that were mutually negotiated and agreed to between hapu and iwi and the Crown over the past 50 years. The bill will make these treaty settlements that were signed into law meaningless. Though the coalition government says it will not be making changes to past settlements, it has clearly indicated that it has a predetermined plan to undertake the retrospective, revisionist and reductive removal, amendment, repeals of Crown government responsibilities and obligations to minimise the treaty principles as outlined in the treaty and Te Tiriti. Māori then will have no option but to reopen and review the terms of their original past treaty settlements and to seek redress for new treaty breaches and prejudices caused by this government's Treaty Principles Bill. The Treaty Principles Bill is immoral. The bill is immoral on the grounds that the Crown, in past treaty settlements with iwi and hapu, utilised the strategy of making a formal apology to avoid being found guilty, liable and accountable for its crimes against Māori and its breaches of Te Tiriti. In this way, the Crown has escaped being brought to justice for its past genocidal actions, policies, processes, racist legislation and injustices perpetrated against the Māori people. The standard Crown apology claims that it seeks to atone for the past injustices it has inflicted upon whānau, hapu and iwi. It, that is the Crown, hopes through a treaty settlement process to restore its honour and relieve the injustices and grievances suffered by the Māori people affected. The Crown apology further states that it looks forward to forging a new and enduring relationship with the Māori people affected, based on good faith, mutual respect, partnership and the principles of Te Tiriti o Waitangi and the treaty. The immoral aspect of the proposed redrafting of the principles of the treaty by Seymour's bill is based on the fact that the bill effectively wipes away any obligation by the Crown to fulfill those past responsibilities and obligations to atone for its past crimes and injustices against Māori, as alluded to in the Crown's apology statement. The Treaty Principles Bill is an attempt to rewrite history. The bill is nothing but a thinly disguised attempt to rewrite history. The intent is to develop a new historical narrative that removes the guilt, culpability and liability of the Crown and its successive colonial governments for sanctioning the genocidal actions, policies, processes and racist legislation against the Māori people to steal our lands and to destroy our way of life, culture and language, and for breaching our inalienable treaty rights that were guaranteed to us by the signing of Te Tiriti in 1840. Koe anō, tai ki te wā, ki te whakamutunga no reira ka huri nā mihi anō ki au nai tātou katoa e mata ki taki mai ana me te kawanatanga. Kia whakaoro ai, kia whakatinana ai hoki nā moimoia nā tūmanaka o nai tātou te iwi Māori. Kia whakakore ai, kia whakapakoru ai tēnei pire hei whakamutua. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā hui mai tātou katoa.
Well, it's not quite. Unfortunately, that's the end of the time for the session. We're just on 10 minutes now. So on behalf of the committee, I want to thank you for your oral presentation and speaking in support of your submission. It is greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Ngā mihi.
We're going to move now to our submission from Robyne Bryant. Robyne is joining us online. Robyne, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us from, appears to be out of space, but I'm sure it's just some very great background you're running there. Look, we've got you for 5 minutes this afternoon. I will hand over to you to begin your presentation. Don't worry about the background. It's certainly made it slightly
Aroha mai. Really, we'd love to be at Matatini. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
I just want to tautoko the previous speakers. That was an amazing lineup with a fantastic historical perspective. And yeah, awesome to hear it. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Robyne Bryant tāku ingoa, ko Kaitahu Kāti Māmoe, rawa ko Scottish clan of Ferguson Aho. My name is Robyne Bryant, ko waio. Who am I, or whose waters am I from? The waters that I come from are, as I have just mentioned before, in a very brief pepeha. My karakia, or opening intention for this presentation, is Te atua kia mātou, tēnei, ki te maramatanga rawa ko whakaro, ki te tukuiho, pono me te tika, me te aroha, haumie, huie, taieki. That we have the wisdom, understanding, clarity, love, and our ancestors' truth and honesty to guide us today. Thanks for the chance to make the submission. You've all read my recommendations that I made, but why did I make those particular ones? And for me, it comes down to understanding the meanings of the words equity and equality. Both are equally important and complement each other, but for many, there is still misunderstanding. I've worked for 30 years in different roles as a health professional in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I've worked in primary care rural areas and busy urban secondary tertiary areas. I've seen an attitudinal shift in the acknowledgement of the devastating effects of colonisation within workforce attitudes. More needs to be done. We don't rest on our laurels or manuka, but without the acknowledgement of te tiriti by the leadership of our service, this would never have happened. And in this, I also pay tribute to all of our iwi who work tirelessly to bring treaty claims, provide feedback to services, protested about rights and made complaints when these had been flagrantly breached. That is not an easy path to take. The leaders of the services could not have brought about any change within our services or the changes needed to both school and tertiary education curriculums without you. So I thank you for that. It seems terribly sad to me that we are here today at the behest of one treaty partner demanding a treaty principles bill to be relitigated to the other treaty partner when it suits them and no one else. Yet again issuing a summons to answer, as in previous historical experiences that have been talked about today. This is the very undermining of any sense of equity that may have felt to have been achieved in the last 20 years. Te tiriti is to be respected and honoured. It binds our partnership and gives legitimacy to the tenure of the influx of non-Indigenous treaty partners to be as citizens in this land and to keep on welcoming more. We are not a big country. We are not a particularly rich country, but we are a country that I believe still values a contract and favours an egalitarian approach to matters. However, increasingly we struggle to overcome widening divisions. Politics then becomes personal. Government does have the mandate to lead, and with that mandate also the responsibility to lead with respect. One partner deciding to relitigate an 150-year-old contract out of the blue as an election promise to a group of fearful, perhaps prejudice of people with an uneducated bias is such a low political cheap shot to score points. Instead of leading and lifting us all up, we give credence to those who I would think are terrified to lose. What? The sense of their own power? And so, back to the education about equity. I just wanted to show you a couple of slides. They're only short. I hope it works. Slideshow and then from the beginning. Bear with. So can you see that slide?
No, we'll have to share, will we?
Share, have I not hit the share button?
So you should have to share your screen, Robyne.
Hang on, I've gone too big straight away. Sorry. End of slide. There we go. Share. There we go. Sorry to use up time. What am I doing wrong? I can't get it to share.
Yeah, look, we might have to get you to just email the slides through, Robyne, if you quickly want to
Share it.
talk us through them, and you
So,
can email them through to the
Basically,
committee.
it was a slide of today. It was a slide showing the maternal mortality rate from 2009 through to 2017. It showed tangata whenua maternal mortality rate, and it showed our treaty partners' mortality rate. Tangata whenua mortality rate was actually twice as high nearly as our treaty partner death rate. So this is a slide about now and what equity means. And equity is important to acknowledge because it's the starting point. It's where we actually start from. Illustrating the inequalities and not equality in this way or form. So what do? It's not going to help to make healthcare privatised or apply population health
Robyne,
insurance.
Robyne, I apologise, but we're now about a minute over time, so I'll ask you to wrap up and provide some closing
Okay.
remarks. And we'll have
Kua
to...
mutu. I do not support the bill. I feel it's been poorly thought out. I think there is much more work to do, and we all need to get on and do it. And we have many ways to, the precedent's been set legally, and I think that would have been a far better place to do it. The divisive politics is not very helpful. Kia ora, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Well, kia ora, Robyne. Thank you for being with the committee this afternoon and for your presentation. We're sorry we couldn't get the slides up, but if you email them through the committee, they will be tabled alongside your submission, and we'll be able to consider them.
Sendrick sharing is not turned on.
Thanks, you. We'll now move on to our next submission. We're going to ask Rosanne Black if Rosanne is with us. Rosanne's online. Great. Rosanne, if you're with us and you can turn your camera on, we can start your submission. Thanks, Rosanne. Thank you for joining the committee. We've got you for 5 minutes this afternoon, so I'll hand over to you to start your presentation.
Kia ora koutou, katoa, no araine me kotirano o kutupuna. E whanu mai aho I o toto, I tupu aki aho I Marijke I te waka o Maui. E kirikiri roa aho I noho ana naere. Even o Ruth lector kawinua. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this meeting of Warmenhoven Bill. I wish to acknowledge the people and actions that have influenced my journey over the years. Family, friendships, activists, marches, practice for the treaty, procuring of food, raising children, and more latterly, scholarship, research and teaching. I wouldn't be here today with all of the people involved in activities of my life. I wish to oppose this bill in its totality. This bill does not represent the spirit and intent of the articles of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. Further, in its conception and writing, it fails to meet standards of fairness and justice. It ignores the decades of work that keeps Te Tiriti alive, meaningful and relevant to past, present, and future generations. Te Tiriti o Waitangi and its predecessor, He Whakatutanga o Te Rangatiratanga o Nuterini, stand as the foundational documents of Aotearoa. The English version of the Treaty of Waitangi serves as an intentional signal that the British assume sovereignty of Aotearoa. There is no need for principles of either Te Tiriti or the Treaty of Waitangi. Rather, we the many peoples of Aotearoa need to place the focus on living by the articles of Te Tiriti, agreed at Waitangi in 1840, and later signed by 500 plus Māori rangatira. I now wish to turn the attention of the Justice Committee to the language used in this bill and the function that that language serves. In doing this, I draw on the Pākehā Standard Story Scholarship of Dr. Herewini and Professor Tim McKinlay. The standard story was patterns of talk by Pākehā, as settlers of European descent, about Māori relations, Māori Pākehā relations, with origins tracing back to the early settlement of Aotearoa. And the themes are identified and used frequently in media and everyday talks. Earlier, in an analysis of individual submissions to the Paiora Healthy Futures Bill, a group of us found that the standard story patterns of anti-Māori talk continue to be used to defend the colonial construct of the state of New Zealand, where the dominant group has both the norm and culturally unmarked as people. Common themes relevant to this bill in particular are Pākehā as the norm and one people rights and rights. Principle 1 A uses the phrase in the best interests of everyone. This draws on the theme Pākehā as norm, where the system works for the unnamed majority and cultural origins are invisible. They are not recognised or named. The unnamed majority experience a sense of cultural deficit. They are missing out or disadvantaged. The naming of cultural groups such as Māori and in more recent times Pacific. In the wording of Clause B, which says in accordance with the rule of law and the maintenance of a free and democratic society, suggests that the unnamed majority determines the parameters of how a free and democratic society is maintained simply because they are the majority. Principle 1 not only admits Te Tiriti o Waitangi, serves to re-establish the religious and ethnocentric beliefs of European superiority that emanate from the 15th century Christian discovery, which gave direction to explorers and colonisers, such as Indigenous peoples were non-Christian and considered to be non-human. Therefore, land was declared empty or terra nullius. Principle 3, everyone is equal.
Look, Rosanne, I'm sorry to interrupt you now. We're almost a minute over time, so I'll just invite you to bring your submission to a close and make any final comments you'd like to make.
Okay, thank you. In conclusion, the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi Bill serve to reinforce Pākehā domination and support a particular ideology. Rather than acknowledge, act on the screeds of evidence produced by years of research, including government reports since the Hun Report 1961, that show how the system is predicated on notions of equality and egalitarianism, has completely failed Māori. Everyone is not treated the same and certainly do not have the same health or wealth outcomes, even in a system which currently purports to recognise Te Tiriti, perhaps even more selectively the Treaty of Waitangi. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosanne. Look, on behalf of the committee, I just want to thank you for your time this afternoon and for providing your submission. It's very helpful for the committee's consideration of the bill.
Thank you.
Folks, we'll go now to our submission from Ruth Ropita.
Hold up.
Kia ora, Ruth. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We've got you for 5 minutes ahead of us, so I'll hand over to you to begin your presentation.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Chair. Koutou ngā mema o tēnei komiti, ko Ruth Ropita tōku ingoa. He uri ahau o te hapuku te ika nui o te moana, a signatory to both he whakaputanga and Te Tiriti o Waitangi. I am the grandparent raised granddaughter of Moira Jane Nitanahu, who started school in the middle of the Native Schools Act and who, on introduction to a world outside of her home, was taught that her reo and tikanga were not good enough. She was taught that to be Māori was to be a second-class citizen on her own whenua. I'm the daughter of Sharon Jane and niece of David Jane, who initially weren't allowed to learn the reo o te kapahaka at school because their mother, my grandma, thought it was a waste of time. Something that she learned throughout her years growing up thanks to government legislation. With all grandparents who were treated as second-class citizens under a government that passed law after law against them, and with Pākeke who were denied the chance to grow up strong in their culture at the forefront of my mind, I stand here firm in my opposition to this bill. I also oppose this bill on behalf of my children and future mokopuna who stand to inherit the rangatiratanga taonga that my tūpuna and the Crown contractually agreed to protect. In Article 2 of Te Tiriti, the Crown agreed to protect my right to tino rangatiratanga. Principle 2 of the bill sets out that if those bill rights differ from the rights of everyone, Subclause 1 applies only if those rights are agreed in the settlement of a historical treaty claim under the Treaty of Waitangi Act 1975. Mr. Chair, this is what te rangatiratanga looks like to me. I have the right to stand on my paipai to uphold the mauri of our marae. I have the right to karanga. I have the right to tangi and kawe our mate at home or in our marae. I have the right to karakia in my own reo to my atua. I have the right to sit in my urupa and sing and cry. I have the right to be maumoko. I have the right to be Māori. These rights belong to Māori long before Te Tiriti was signed and will remain long after this paru bill is a scribble in the back of my future mokopuna's school book. There is no historical treaty claim that affords me these rights. There is only Te Tiriti, which now this bill seeks to dismantle. Ka lega, kia ora.
Kia ora, Ruth. Thank you for that submission and that concise way of summarising it up. We've got time for a few questions. We'll start with Huhana, Lyndon, and then we'll go to Todd Stevenson.
Tēnā koe, Ruth, o te rā te uri o te hāpaku. Ngā mihi nui mō wō kōrero e mua ia tātou I tēnei rā. I'd like to acknowledge you as a descendant of Te Hāpaku, a signatory to He Whakapūtanga me Te Tiriti o Waitangi, and want to invite you to share with us as a panel. Do you think at the time of Te Hāpaku, Mahikai and Waikato signing Te Tiriti o Waitangi and Kahungunu, that they would see in the future, after signing Te Tiriti, that their people would be living in desperate times, homeless, jobless, with structural racism, impacted in low socioeconomic circumstances right now? Do you think that that's the vision of an Aotearoa for their uri and for all of our communities?
Tēnā koe Huhana. I can't speak on behalf of my tūpuna, but if I was the tūpuna looking forward 140 years to where my mokopuna would be, if I was signing the treaty, I would have hoped that equity was the direction that our country had moved into. I believe that the vision that our tūpuna had I believe that my vision for my mokopuna moving forward is to be in a country and on whenua where they are classed as first-class citizens, that they aren't looked down upon for their reo, for their tikanga, that we're not having to constantly battle racism and blatant racism that recently I feel that with the current actions of our government has legitimised racism across the country, and they feel safe to be like that in public. As a tūpuna, if I was signing that treaty, I would be very disappointed at how our country has ended up to where we are today.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Thanks, Huhana and Kia ora. Thank you for your submission this afternoon. That's the 5 minutes we have. It's gone pretty quickly, they always do, but just want to, on behalf of the committee, thank you for your submission and for being with us.
Kia ora.
We'll go to our submission, our next submission from Sally Stedman. Sally's here. Sally, come up to the table. Thank you for being with us and for being here for a few of our submissions. We've got your submission for 5 minutes this afternoon, so I'll hand over to you to take us through it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. I will take it that you have read my submission. My journey to this point began when I walked onto the Gate Park Battleground on Remembrance Day 2023 with good friend and tikanga consultant Ricki Stevens. This was about the time the coalition talks were happening and also about the time that I started to learn more about New Zealand history and tikanga Māori. Some would say my journey actually began when I was born because I was born on the anniversary of that battle in Tauranga Hospital near where the big cannons were fired and not far from where ancestors on both sides fought in 1864. This battle was a defining moment in our history, not just because Māori had an unlikely win, but also because they tended to the fallen soldiers on both sides afterwards, adhering to a code of conduct drawn up before the battle. I've since visited a few more battlegrounds in New Zealand and I'm tired of being around trauma. So my goal today is peace. And peace starts with respect and understanding. From what I see, there are fundamental differences in our two philosophies which seem to have been forgotten about. Western is based upon a materialistic view of life, where we mostly focus upon what we experience in ourselves through our senses and what science can measure. Tikanga is based upon an understanding that everything is connected, including our people, land, ancestors, and the unseen forces of life. This might sound weird to Westerners, but modern science tells us that when two particles interact, that they can remain connected over space and time. So no matter how far apart they are, if one particle changes, there's an instant impact on the other particle. This indicates some kind of relational force happening, which challenges our materialistic view. Now to the bill. This bill was presented under the name of equality and talks about one law for everyone. But I ask, which philosophy is that law to be based upon? I see no mention of it in the bill, which suggests either a significant cultural blind spot, or I'm blind, or there is a controlling shift of power, or both. Because if equality was truly the purpose, there'd be a fourth principle, something like New Zealand's law will be based upon Kiwi philosophy, an equal combination of tikanga Māori and Western philosophy. We see just some of the power that comes from combining the best of these two philosophies every time the All Blacks take to the field. So the way I see it is that we have two choices: reject the bill and choose the path of respect and collaboration to resolve whatever is underlying the issues that are driving it. Or two, if you insist on pushing it through, add the fourth principle that is obviously missing. History warns us about what happens when we don't understand and respect cultural differences. And today is the anniversary of the Featherston prisoner of war tragedy, where a moment where another misunderstanding and cultural differences resulted in tension and fear and 49 deaths. We are past that era now. The choice you make here is not just about law. It's about what kind of nation we become. Do we continue to walk the path of trauma, or do we build a future that is strong because it stands proudly on both feet? The choice is yours and the consequences will be ours for generations to come. Please choose wisely. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Some time for questions. We'll go to Todd Stevenson.
Thanks, Sally. Thanks for your submission, which I've read. Do you think then that the principles of tikanga Māori should extend to all New Zealand citizens?
I think that not all principles should extend to all New Zealanders, but I think that if New Zealand understood the principles under tikanga, that they would actually want some of them incorporated into our philosophy.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Sally. Thank you for being with us this afternoon in person as well. It's always nice to have people with us in the room. So acknowledge your submission and just appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
We'll move on now to a submission from Te Tawera Hapu of Ngāti Awa ki te Awa o Te Atua. And joining us is Dr. Pauroto Ngaroho. So can the team there, if they can hear me, just accept the promotion as a panelist and we'll be able to bring you into the room. Yeah, will they show up on screen?
No.
Oh, I don't. Yeah, no, I don't like them. I think people should show up in person or on screen. Look, so the team from Te Tawera Hapu, you're declining the invitation to be a panelist. So in order to join the call and present, you'll have to accept that invitation. Any updates?
No.
What we'll do is we'll probably move on to Sandra if Sandra's there.
No.
No? I assume we've got no one else in the room there. So if the panel, if the attendees who are due to submit are in the room and they can hear me talking, when you're asked to become a panelist, please click accept, or else we can't bring you into the room to make a submission. And if we can't make any progress in the next minute or so, what we'll do is we'll have to suspend until probably 2:35 to get Sandra O'Neill. Unless Sandra is here.
No, she's not on that. But
Can we send them a message maybe in case they can't hear me? Yeah, I'd rather try and get them on now rather than break and then have to come back. We've got Sandra. Okay, let's bring Sandra in and we'll jump up the order there. Five. Does Sandra need to accept as well?
I promoted her and I think she's left the call.
Okay. Sandra left the call. So what we're going to do is we're going to suspend until who have we got now? Okay, so it looks like we do have Dr. Podoktor with us. So if the team there could unmute their Zoom and turn their camera on, then they'll be able to participate. If we can't make this work in the next 15 to 30 seconds, we will suspend and move to the next submitter. Okay, folks, looks like we're not making any progress. So what I'm going to do is we're going to suspend the meeting until 2:35, at which point we'll return for Sandra O'Neill. So we'll see everyone in 10 minutes.
They just suspended the meeting for 10 minutes